Hello, I want to welcome everyone to the Power of Our Story. We are a place of safety and connection for those who protect us. We build community by sharing stories in a healing and judgment-free zone. And I'd like to invite you to come and just be part of our community. It's become a really big community of people who care. Everybody here understands, whatever you've gone through with trauma. It's a great group of people. So today we want to welcome Mark Meincke. While serving as a UN peacekeeper in Croatia in 1994, Mark was injured with PTSD. He went undiagnosed for 23 years. As a way to share his recovery and to help others, he started Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. Today, it's the largest show of its kind on Earth. OTR serves as an aggregate for healing modalities. Mark finds every resource he can and brings it to the show so the audience can know where to go for healing that suits them. The sharing of stories also serves as therapeutic peer support. And Mark has a book out called Why Not Me? The Keys to Unlock Your Power and Release Your Potential. And then again, he has his podcast, Operation Trauma Recovery, .org. I'm going to put it in the description, both of these links to his book and to his podcast. So now I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and then after he is done sharing his story, we'll open it up to the group for comments and questions. So Mark, I want to welcome you here. I love what you're doing. I love what you're about, obviously, because it's storytelling and it's resources and it's healing. And you're doing it so well. So thank you so much and welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it feels just like a peer support group. I think that's what it is, and it's so important because when you get out, whether any uniform services, when you're out, and like you're either in or you're out, and then you're in Narnia. You don't seem to have a home. I remember going back to the base after I got out, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing here?" I was like, "I don't know. Missed you guys. Wanted to say hi." And they're like, "Yeah, you're out. Stay out." And then it took at least 10 years before start to identify with veteran status and find other people within that community. So there's at least a decade where I don't really have, didn't have much for veteran friends. I had a couple, and civilians think I'm just bonkers because I was bonkers, and so there's no place for you, and you always feel like the odd duck, more than what's comfortable. So where's your community? And it's groups like this that create that community because it's like, oh, I get it. We everybody in this room runs into some form of stolen valor at one time or another, and one of the forms of stolen valor is trauma related. There's people that want to play the trauma Olympics with you. It's hilarious. It's like, oh yeah, well, I went through some stuff too, and I'm a tough guy too. It's like, well, nobody said I was tough. you know, but it's the point is that it's hard to find other people that actually get you, and there's no place like a group like this to find that. And as you and I were saying off air, PTSD, or more accurately, PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, is an injury of disconnection. It disconnects you from who you are, who you were, who you wanted to be. Usually disconnects you from your family, from your loved ones, from the things you used to love to do. For me, walking in the mountains, it disconnected me from that. I'd be there in the mountains, couldn't feel it. It wasn't recharging my batteries. I was just numb. I'm like, oh man, this sucks. My tools aren't working. And so if it's an injury of disconnection, connection seems to be the antidote. And this is one of the ways to create connection is groups just like this. But what did you, so you wanted me to sort of say the story of who I am? I always find that awkward when you just like, okay, who are you?
Yeah, that
Where would you
that
like me
was
to
a
start?
fantastic intro, by the way. That was power packed already. We've loved it. How about just a little bit of your background? You know, your upbringing, a little bit about that, and what led you to what you ended up doing for work, and
Mm.
and then, um, you know, some of the traumatic times, kind of where that led you into this powerful work that you're doing now for healing.
Going back to something else you and I said off air, we wasted all kinds of good stuff. But people with trauma-rich childhoods tend to choose uniform services. People with trauma-rich childhoods tend to end up in trauma-rich environments as a profession. Um, why? I don't know, but it's U.S. military statistics that showed the correlation very, very clearly. It's a positive correlation. And for me, it started right at birth. I'm adopted at birth. And you figure, well, you're a baby, you don't remember it. Well, apparently you do. Body keeps the score. The abandonment of being adopted at birth does something to you. And it's a whole thing called adoption trauma that I'm just starting to learn about now. And I'm 54. So it's been a while, but it explains a heck of a lot. And that is like the starting point. That's the rudder for the rest of your life, is whatever happens to you in childhood. And and then with my folks, you know, my dad is the son of a World War II veteran, and had no idea how to connect with a child. Like, none. Dad passed last year, and we went my whole life without ever having a real conversation. You know, like, how's the weather? You know, hey, nice truck. That's about as deep as it got. You know? And that's all he had. That's all he could do because of how he was raised. So I'm this abandoned kid, um, and who I was raised by wolves as a result. You know, dad provided a roof and food and pretty regular beatings, actually. And that's what I got. So by the time I ended up joining the military in the infantry, and then at the end of that, getting into a war zone, my cup is already full, man. You know, I don't know what my ACEs score actually is, and for those who don't know, ACEs is adverse childhood events, so childhood trauma. You know, they got a way to score that. Don't know what mine is, but it's got to be up there fairly good. Molested from an older family member from the age of 7 to 12, so that puts you on the scoreboard. Raped at 17, so it was just a couple years before I joined the army. That definitely puts you on the scoreboard. It's not a good time. And a dad used to smack me around on the regular. I remember when I was 5, he once backhanded me so hard. He had these Sammy Davis Jr. rings on. He liked the costume jewelry. I think he had one real one, the rest were fake. But those great big heavy rings, and like 5 years old, backhanded so hard that I had to stamp. Like it was funny on Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. He gets punched in the head, and you can see the imprint of the ring. I'm like, oh, I did that. I remember being, and he did. He was checking it in a bathroom mirror. That's exactly right. Because we were on a road trip, and I'm looking at the imprint of this ring, and I can count the stones in my forehead. I was 5 years old, and I thought, and I could feel the indentation. Like, holy shit, that's really something. But when you've had a childhood like that, for whatever reason, you tend to choose trauma-rich environments. But even with all that, I didn't want to be the killer. I didn't want to be the infantry soldier. I wanted to actually be the healer. So I signed up as a medic, but because my marks were so horrific in high school, I didn't make the selection. So music to a recruiter's ears. Well, what else do you got? Because I'm going. I already had the going away party. Like, what else do you got? And they said infantry. I said, I'll take it. What is it? So I had no idea what I was getting into, but the sales pitch was pretty good. Do you like camping? Yeah, I like camping. It's not like camping at all. Um, but even choosing a profession, so being the killer instead of being the healer, um, I mean, that's sucking and blowing at the same time. It wasn't good. Wasn't good for me because now I had to really change who I was at the core. So even that wasn't easy. And it took a long time to swing back. I'm still glad I did it. Still glad that I have, I know how to be a combat soldier and that I've been in a combat zone and I've done that. So, okay, I got that under my belt. I can handle myself. That's great to add to the emotional resume. But during Croatia, so for those that don't know, 'cause the U.S. wasn't involved in the Balkans until much later on, and had no involvement during the United Nations portion of it. So the Croatian War, Croatian Civil War, it's all of Yugoslavia disintegrated, and it was 92 to 95 was sort of the official dates for the war, and I was there in the middle of it in 94. Our job, peacekeeping is a combat mission, but it's the world's worst combat mission because you have rules of engagement like crazy where it's like, can I shoot back? Well, yeah, but not until after they shoot at you. And then if they shoot at you with small arms, you can't reply with the 50 cal, and like if it's a bolt action rifle, like you can only plop single shots back at them. It has to be like fire, you know, like, oh my God. So you never knew when you could shoot back and when you couldn't. And there was times where I really wanted to, but I didn't know if I was going to cause an international incident. So all these questions that if it's just a straight up combat mission and it's like, oh, threat, brap, react to the threat. Much better, much better. But instead, it was a threat, and then you're doing math in your head. Am I going to jail if I respond? Like, what's going to happen? Like, what do I do? Because you don't know until it's too late. So UN missions suck. They are tough. But numerous things happened during that tour, including, and I don't know if it was the point that tipped me over for the injury, but it's the most likely, even though there's about a dozen major events that happened. I hit a tripwire. I'm the only guy I know that hit a tripwire and didn't blow up. So, and I hit it at a full jog too. So people talk about near death experiences. This was an actual death experience. I thought I was dead for sure, but didn't go boom. And miraculously, and that area that we were in was called the Kraina. It was the most heavily mined area on the planet, or top three for sure, at that time. It was landmines absolutely everywhere. They were going off because a cloud would go in front of the sun. Just the temperature variance would set off unstable older mines. So like they were everywhere and constantly going off for just because they felt like it. Um, so a very trauma-rich environment, and my behavior started to change after that. I hit that tripwire, although there was so many incidents. It was ridiculous. They were very dangerous missions. Um, but I went 23 years. I got out of the military because of it. I knew that I was a mess, but nobody was talking about PTSD in 1994. And if they were, it wasn't something that you wanted to admit that you had. Help was certainly not available. There was no education on it. We didn't know what to do or where to go. I knew there was something deeply wrong, but the only thing that my brain could grasp was I can't do this anymore. I knew that. I knew I was done. So I broke we have two 3-year contracts, the first 3 year, then the second 3 year. We call them the first and second basic engagements. I was in the middle of my second basic engagement, and I broke it. Lost a ton of money for return to contributions to pension and stuff, but I broke it because I knew I just had to move on. I just couldn't do it. But there was nobody in leadership to see, oh, this guy's not doing so well, and he's just going to get out of the army. But that's what happened, and it still happens, unfortunately. People have a problem, they just get out instead of somebody going, whoa, 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 tap you on the shoulder. Let's go have a talk. You might have an injury here. Let's figure it out. The military, both U.S. and Canada, is getting better today, but back then, you had no hope. And 23 years is a very long time to have a train wreck. What finally had me connect the dots, I was on my second marriage with the most amazing woman that I'm still married with. It's been 10 years now. Still likes me, which is great. Uh, but we were trying to navigate dinner time because what I understand now, but I didn't understand then is that uh, for whatever reason, the dinner table was a life or death mission. Of course, not consciously, but the tapes in the background. I was still in combat and I didn't know it. And I was self-conscious because she was the breadwinner. So I wanted my two children to really behave, and be grateful and respectful. And I was just on them, man. They couldn't wink, blink, or turn on the lights without me telling them that they were doing it wrong. I was at such a crazy anxiety level. And so my wife and I, for like 3 months, we tried every strategy under the sun. How, how do we just have dinner without Mark being an a-hole? And we couldn't figure it out. And one day, my youngest boy, Dawson, he was, oh, I don't know, like 9. And he's just little and sweet, sweet, sweet little boy. And he takes his plate to the dishwasher. The plate tips, the crumbs hit the floor, and I hit the roof. I'm down on one knee, knife hand out. Dawson, what in the hell is wrong with you? And I watched him break. I watched my kid break. I could see it. I could watch his face melt. And I knew that I was hurting my kid. But you think I could stop? I couldn't stop. Like the train was off the tracks, and I couldn't stop. Even though I could see what I was doing, I couldn't stop. And my wife put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Honey, they're just crumbs. We can clean them up." And I broke into tears, went to the next room, looked up the Royal Canadian Legion, and made the call. Hardest phone call I've ever made in my life. We tried everything we could to figure it out ourselves, but we couldn't. And to get to the point where, because I was like, I got this, it's what we all do. I got this. I got this. I don't need help. I got this. I got it. I didn't get it. I didn't have it. I needed help so bad. Out of responsibility to my kids. Now, fast forward now, my youngest will be 16 this summer. Oldest is serving in the reserves as he's in high school, which is pretty cool. The oldest is 17 and a half, and he's just got slated for his battle school this summer for the reserves. He's super excited, and I have an unbelievable relationship with both my boys. We're like best friends, and we get along. And I got it in the nick of time, and I'm still apologizing to them. Like, I'm so sorry. I was impossible. I'm so sorry. But that that started the journey, and then that was 2017, and then in 2019, I had been in peer support groups for a while. Got qualified by the Department of National Defense as a peer supporter. So was running the group, and then realized there's people, like, we'd have the group every Tuesdays, I think, every second week. So every second week, everybody get together, and some people are driving 2, 3 hours to be a part of a group like what we're sitting in today. 2 or 3 hours to get there every other week. And I'm like, okay, I recognize that this is obviously has some significant value to you. Wow, this is really something. People put more effort into showing up for peer support than anything else. And I thought, well, how do we scale this? Like, there's the same half dozen or dozen people every other week, and it means a lot to them, and it's their lifeline. So it's kind of dumb to just restrict it to us. Like, how do we make it bigger? So I invented the show, Operation Tango Romeo, and that's what it was originally. It was supposed to be augmented peer support. So I figured, what, 20, 30 episodes and I'm done. You know, what more could there possibly be to talk about? And then the show grew and it grew and it grew. And now I'm at 320 episodes. And it's still that augment for peer support. So that element is absolutely there. Every time you hear a story, that's there. But it's also an aggregate for, as in the introduction, an aggregate for healing modalities. So, I mean, therapy was brutal for me. I hear great therapy stories sometimes, and I'm always so happy. Like, great, that's wonderful. You had a good experience. It worked for you. That's awesome. It damn near killed me. Damn near killed me. Matter of fact, I had a suicide attempt during the years of therapy that I told my therapist was coming. It's like I think I can fight it off, these ideations, but oh, I don't know. It feels like I'm getting closer and closer to the edge of the metaphorical cliff. And I'm just worried that, maybe I'll get tipped over because I get blindsided by something. And she's like, yeah, if you haven't done it yet, you won't do it. I'm like, okay, sounds like you're daring me. And then 3 months later, a confluence of several major events all happened at the same time, like major events. And I had a psychotic break, tipped me right over. So trying to deal with it, I jump on the motorcycle and I'm off to the mountains. I have this area in the mountains when I lived in Okotoks, just south of Calgary, called Kananaskis. Absolutely gorgeous. It's a lot like Denver as you get into the mountains. And I'm out at cell service range. I'm in the middle of nowhere, out on a dead end road in the mountains, just trying to level out. And I ended up trying to open up my left wrist, and a legit miracle happened. Like legit. My knives, I keep them sharp. This particular knife, I'd been cutting boxes for the recycle bin earlier that day. So yeah, it was dulled from all the cardboard cutting, but that shouldn't have stopped me. I was poking and digging, and I barely even disturbed the skin. Like like it barely curled up a little bit of skin on my left wrist, but I was digging and pushing. And I checked like after like weeks later, I checked that same knife. It was plenty sharp, plenty sharp. It should have opened me up, no problem at all, but it didn't. I couldn't break the skin with that knife, and it even took me 2 days after that to realize that that's what I had done. It was a psychotic break. I had lost connection with reality. Um, I just wanted to go to sleep in my mind, and and 3 months prior, I'd asked the therapist, like I think I'm getting close, and instead of help, I was, well, if you haven't done it yet, you probably won't. So the gift of that though is like, okay, I've gone all the way. So now when I talk to somebody who is either having the ideations or has made an attempt like I have, I get it. Had that not happened, I wouldn't get it. And I wouldn't understand just how dangerous suicidal ideations were. Because I mean, it was my first thought waking up, my last thought going to bed. And I couldn't bat the thoughts away. I couldn't, like intrusive thoughts. I couldn't get the suicidal thoughts out of my head, no matter how hard I tried. And but I didn't know how dangerous that was. I didn't know that that was like arurga, arurga, a kind of situation. But that's exactly what it was. And now when I do speaking gigs, I tell that story and let them know, like, if you ever find yourself in traffic and imagining what it'd be like drifting over a lane and having a head on with a gravel truck or into the bridge abutment, if that is something that pops in your head more than like once a month for a moment, go talk to somebody right now. You don't have this. You don't. I thought I had it too. I didn't. And then life happens, a whole bunch of big events all at the same time that you have no control over, and tip me over the edge. So the journey continues, and I'm still here, and older, wiser, stronger, and with more empathy because of everything that I've continued to go through. So yeah, I'm at 320 episodes now. The show, what I've been able to achieve with it is so great because I have the mission is to save lives and relieve pain by making help for PTS injuries easily accessible. That's the mission. So, because I have a clearly defined mission, I got people willing to help me, like impossible people. The Canadian Chief of Defense Staff, which is the dude in charge of the entire military, well, land, air, sea, in charge of the whole active serving military, was on my show. Gave me 30, 40 minutes or something. And that doesn't happen. You don't get that guy like that. It doesn't happen. But I got him, and he threw me a personal invite. So I'm going to meet him in person at the 110th anniversary of our regiment this summer, because him and I both started in the same infantry regiment a million years ago in the Dark Ages, riding a horse. Um, all because of the mission, right? And if you don't find a mission of service, whatever it is, whether it's volunteering at, we have a veterans food bank in Alberta. It's actually, we have numerous locations now all over the province, all because of one amazing woman. And put cans on shelves at a veterans food bank, or any food bank, or like any type of service gives you that reason to get up in the morning, no matter how small, you know. And being in service of others is one of the most important things. If I've always been baffled by the people that say, "Well, I don't think I'm ever going to retire. I don't want to, because what am I going to do? Like, you can only play so much golf. Like, golf, that's the limit of your imagination of what you can do with your time. Golf, okay, great. I got a friend that does 180 rounds a season, but that ain't going to fill your cup. Just entertaining yourself, and it's good to do. It's a great, any sport, you're moving your body. That's all wonderful. It's self-care, but you can't live on just self-care alone. You can't. It's empty. It's hollow. It does not fill your cup. It does not. Service does, though. With service in whatever form that you can find it, I don't know, but service and connection. Well, service creates connection, because if you're serving others, there's no better way to connect to another human being than by serving that human being. And what better way to connect to your community than by serving that community? And it doesn't have to be in a big, grandiose way, like everybody on here, uniform services, Marine Corps, fire. That's a great big grandiose service, and part of the big green machine with all the cool toys. It's amazing, right? Well, you can't have that anymore. If you're out, you're out. That big machine has all the fun toys. You can't be flying in a twin Huey with your feet dangling out the side anymore, but that was cool. But you don't need to. It doesn't need to be that at all. It's just as simple as putting cans on a shelf for somebody else, or showing up once a week to walk dogs at the SPCA. Anything, anything where you're in service to others, whether it be people, animals, or both. Uh, that creates the connections that are the healing. It's purpose, it's connection. There's just nothing better. It's also dangerous if you overdo it. So many of us that are wearing the capes forget the self-care. But if you don't do self-care because you think it's selfish, now you're actually being selfish because you're not looking after yourself. If you don't look after yourself, you can't look after others. It's the oxygen mask in an airplane thing, right? It's that, and it's always such a tough balance. I watch friends in different service industries burn out all the time because they hang on too long. Charles just called me, a friend of mine who worked at the Veterans Association for years, and lost everything. Lost his marriage, lost it all because too much service in a high trauma rich environment. He didn't let go quick enough. It's like hanging on to a frying pan with a red hot handle. As soon as you feel the burn, you better let go, or you're going to do some serious damage. And he did that damage. And I see that because the self-sacrificing, fall on the sword mentality that we all have. I see it again and again. It's a tough balance, but it's so if you can balance service, if you can, then you will find the connection. If you can balance that with self-care, that's the secret soup. That's what it is. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, Sarah. I just went on a total tangent. I apologize, but
Oh, I
I think
loved it.
I think that's well, that's where we're at, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mark, thank
Sorry,
you
sorry for
so
the rant,
much.
everyone.
No, it's the power of you being so open and vulnerable in things that people don't want to talk about, but that is so prevalent. Your talk about suicide and suicide ideation. There are so many people suffering in silence that need to hear that. They need to hear the way that you shared it through your story. I love to what you said. I'm going to borrow this if you don't mind, that
Please.
the injury, it's an injury of disconnection. That's what post-traumatic stress is, or I would imagine even traumatic brain injury that seems to be coupled with a lot of our combat veterans. It's the injury of disconnection. And I think hearing that narrative, um, I just feel like that opens up even more conversations. And I really appreciate you sharing, Mark. I think this is so important in our arena of being there for our veterans and first responders, those who have sacrificed so much but are suffering in silence. And as we have talked about many times, can be for decades.
Yep.
And it's just that taking that step of being open. And like you said before, that when you hear somebody else's story, it's like you're borrowing their courage. Is that okay
Of
to
course. Yeah, none of
okay.
that's trademarked. You just let her rip.
I want to make sure I even did it justice in the way that you said that. I thought that was so powerful. And I just think that is so true. It really is empowering to hear other people's stories when we have just not articulated it yet. We just have
I,
not put it in
I don't
words.
know what it was, but like right at the beginning of the journey, I did before the podcast, I just did a Facebook Live, kind of telling my story. And I had three or four, I don't drink anymore, but I had three or four drinks in me at the time. And it's pretty obvious when you see that, like that video. But the local newspaper called me after just a stupid Facebook Live. Um, so I just had something in me that realized that while I go through this, people are suffering in shame that they shouldn't be. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Um, I got to do this out loud. I like somehow, I didn't know how, but somehow this is going to help or encourage somebody else to reach out. So it started with a half drunk Facebook Live was the first time I ever did anything. And that was some time ago. That was 2017.
And just the power of you just putting it on the table. Drunk or not, you put the truth on the table and really connected. Obviously, you connected so deeply to people, or people deeply connected to you. And what an amazing story. What an amazing beginning of getting your voice out there for healing. Um, Gosh, thank you so much. I want to open it up. This group always has so many great comments and questions. So, Scott, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, sir. Hey, Mark, I'm so happy you're still here. When you look at life, people often wonder, God works in mysterious ways. What is it about? You talked about empathy. That's huge, right? Right from the get-go, that was something that you touched on. And I think you can only have empathy if you've walked a certain path and you go through the things that you go through, and then you see other people that are suffering in those ways because you've taken that path. And you just shared about how you even got into this whole thing. You know, a moment that some folks would think that's pretty messed up. But again, God works in mysterious ways. I absolutely believe that. Just like the miracle you talked about, you have a purpose in life, and it's absolutely what you're doing now because you're making a difference. You're helping to save people that are lost, and that's an amazing gift. And sometimes it's a tough gift to carry too. But I feel from not knowing you from Adam, I feel listening to your story, it just strengthens my faith that there are no coincidences when you sit down and start mapping things out. Um, Thank you for what you're doing. It's one other thing is it's always interesting how when you listen to someone's story, you can see elements of your own life in some of the things that they talk about, and that you can be thankful that you're still here in all of us, right? Because there's things that happen, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm glad I was here today. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. Want to tell everybody else too, you are absolutely welcome to tell me to pause the recording. If you'd like to share things that are deeper, just tell me to pause. I do that for myself many times too. Jim's laughing. I see you, Jim. Yeah, he teases me about doing that, but yeah, you don't want everything out there all the time. You got to process it through, and when you decide you want to share it, then you do. But this is a time, that's the cool part about actually being on this call live, is that we get to have more discussions outside of the actual recording. So anyway, does anybody have any other comments or questions? I see everybody chewing on this.
I'll go. In 2018, when I was at my lowest and I wanted to end my life, it went back to a call. But I made a choice to be open about it. And it was something that I'd never heard anybody in my career. I started in police work in 2006. And, everybody on the call has been around the culture for a long time. You never talked about PTSD. You never talked about any of your problems. You just went right back to work and you dealt with it. Well, that was part of the problem. And when I finally said something, I made it a choice to be open and honest about everything. Yeah, I didn't care what anybody thought. I didn't care about what my department would say. And it's in my experience, just me being open and honest with people. It's allowed them to come out and say stuff. They've been able to, be like, man, look, Brian, you're 6'2", 230 pounds, and you were at your lowest. You told me you wanted to kill yourself and all these other things, and man, that's really powerful. I'm dealing with this too. And then it's just like a domino effect, and it's awesome. I feel I can't do police work anymore, and I share. I share with everybody, and it's complete strangers. I'll go up to somebody outside of the street, if they want to listen, I'll tell them a story, and you never know what kind of impact that'll have with them. So Mark, thanks for sharing. It's tell everybody.
Doing my best.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it is, when somebody shares their story, it really gives other people permission to walk through that door and heal, doesn't it? Just
yeah. In police work, and fire department's a little bit different because I imagine it's a lot of the same, but you guys go back to the firehouse and you guys can debrief and all that kind of stuff. We go back and we sit in our cars, and for instance, there's one night in particular, I jumped into a pond and I pulled this autistic kid off the bottom of the pond, almost drowned myself. I had to go home and take a shower. And on my way back in, my lieutenant calls and like, hey, why don't you just stay home? And I was like, well, LT, I'm like 5 minutes from the city. I'm just going to come into work. Well, I should have just been told to stay home, then go see, department therapists and so on. But that's the way it was. And it's slowly changing, but it takes people, talking about it, and it's, getting that old culture out of there and, getting these people that understand that, yeah, PTSD, PTSI, depression, these are real things that officers, veterans, guys that throw in ER doctors and throw in anybody, it's real stuff. And it shouldn't be happening anymore.
Yeah.
So I do everything I can every day to share and try to help wherever I can.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Rich, what's on your mind?
Mark, thank you very much for your story. I'm glad I came on today. I was running a little late, but I'm glad I made it. Your story in so many aspects resonated with me. I mean, especially, I never heard that connection before when you talked about the connection between your childhood experiences and going into a trauma-rich profession. That was very interesting. And then when you said that in 1994 you had trouble finding help, and I thought about it because my stuff started in 1967. So,
You didn't have a hope.
and it wasn't until 1991 that I was able to get some help. Fast forward to last year when I found Sara, that's when I really had an opportunity to unload everything. I had a drug deal go bad. They tried to kill me, and the next day they threw me back out in an undercover operation. They figured, oh, he might chill, he might freeze. Let's get him back out there. Get on the horse and keep riding. But yeah.
Mm.
Love
Thanks.
that picture of you in that old car.
68 Ford.
Looks like you should be in the movie Smokey and the Bandit, chasing the bandit.
Yeah, it was very very touching to hear Rich's story, just how many decades he just really suffered in silence from a lot of crazy things that happened. And then, even a betrayal of justice and just really tough things that he had no outlet. He had no place to deal with that trauma or kind of talk through it or even understand what he was dealing with. And so it's been, again, a beautiful thing to see, even after all these decades, to see, the story starting to unfold as he shares it. So I appreciate your courage too, Rich. Thank you. Jim, what's on your mind?
I was just going to sort of follow up on a couple of things that Brian said. I do think, sharing your story is so critically important. And, I had the opportunity to become a senior leader in the profession and get invited to speak to young people coming in and that type of thing. And up until a certain point, my speeches or talks were always focused on this is the greatest job ever, and you've hit the jackpot, and all those kinds of things. And I still talk about that. I mean, I still share that, but then I do shift and I go into, hey, you need to be prepared for some of these other aspects of the job that aren't so great, that could affect you, and try to share my experiences. And some of it is, some of it comes from the point of don't do it the way I did it, in the sense that some of the things we did in the 80s and 90s, were contributing factors to certainly probably my cancer, and certainly probably to some of my other, challenges and that kind of thing. And so I share that with them. To the point, the comment about the fire service, you're right. We do have that team cohesive kind of situation where we do kind of have the opportunity to go back with each other and talk. But at the same time, we can be our worst enemies too, in the sense of we have a great ability to eat our own up pretty good. And sometimes, you don't recognize where somebody's at. And you can exacerbate the problem. The other experience I had was when I promoted to a rank where I was no longer a part of that cohesive team. I was that other guy on the other side of the line, shall we say. And just like the police officers, I got in my car by myself and drove away, right? And so I solved all my own problems, right? Because I didn't have that group to talk with. And so I share that in part of my story about the need to develop what I refer to as a circle, that of people that you can actually communicate with and talk to, that are at your level, and they may not be within your organization. You may have to seek that outside of your organization to help you overcome challenges or deal with difficult things. So.
Jim, thank you. Yeah, great comments and points too. Really appreciate everybody contributing, because again, we know that there's a lot of this out there. There's a lot of people suffering, not knowing what to do with this. So I love what Scott Mann says. He says it's the generosity of scars, that you are being generous with your scars to help other people who are still in their wounds, their open wounds. Mark, loved having you on. What would you like us to walk away with from this conversation?
Like and subscribe to Operation Tango Romeo on the Drama Recovery Podcast.
There you go. Okay.
Well, I don't know, because everybody, like, I don't know everybody's stories so well enough to suggest what works for you and what doesn't. I'm like, if there's any part of the story that, or any of the nuggets that I dropped that you resonate with, that's awesome. I would ask you to go on Spotify, find Operation Tango Romeo, and click follow, and share when you see either the title of an episode, or you hear something that you're like, oh, that reminds me of Dave, or that reminds me of Lucy, and this is really applicable for them. This is exactly what they need to hear right now. Just share it. That's what it's there for, and it's there to learn. I had one police officer take me out for lunch. And he said, "I'm so glad to finally meet you. I just had to tell you, a friend of mine badgered me to listen to the first 10 episodes. So I finally did, and then I couldn't stop, and I listened to the first 40, and I bawled during every single one. Not because I'm telling sad stories, but because he had the relief of hope. Because he constantly heard something that made him go, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And thank you. Now I know what to actually do about it. Like the first 10, 15 episodes, but I've had so many people reach out to me that have binged like 50 episodes. I'm like, who does that? I've listened to 50 episodes of nobody's show. I've never done that. But people do that. And I have people that have listened to all 320, which is that's a whole lot of Mark. My wife hasn't even done that. But there's people that have listened to all 320, and there's therapists that write prescriptions for my show.
Mhm.
And one of them that's always sharing on LinkedIn, he started back at one again, and he's going through it again. Okay, so there's got to be some value in there, and some people think so anyway. But it's a resource that I don't get paid to do it. It's all volunteer. It's all free. It's all on my own dime. Except for this laptop I'm using. This was given to me by a sponsor. Um, but it's there, and it's a hell of a resource. So please use it, and use it and share it. And that way you're joining me in that mission to save lives and relieve pain by making help for PTS injuries easily accessible. So please join me in that mission, and share it as best as you can, and let somebody else find it, and let somebody else heal as a result. And for some folks, they just can't do therapy. They can't do anything existential. My show is all they got. That's it. And because it's free, which is nice. But for some people, it's all they got. And so don't, help somebody find it is my ask.
Yeah. Very good. You're helping people get their life back. And, when somebody finds something like that, they do want to keep watching. They do want to keep on that trail for healing. I really appreciate you, Mark. And I'll have, again, everything in the description on the YouTube channel, so you can listen in on the podcast, and you can also get the book and just connect with Mark. So, Mark, thank you again.